Chinese firmly believe that the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without a fight. Having said that, China has all along, ever since Xi Jinping took over in 2013, and you notice every movement from Doklam till whatever he did in Ladakh, and even what he had been doing in Arunachal Pradesh, was indicated that the pressure had started. At no point of time after the kind of building of road, our own disassociation from the building of road, and the way the Pakistanis and the Chinese got into making that China-Pakistan economic corridor,
Yes.
and are distancing away from it, claiming that the things had already started. And so much of interaction between our Prime Minister and Xi Jinping was not leading to anywhere. And therefore, it was evident from May itself, when the troops had started clashing along the Pinggang-Tso Lake, and the things that started happening, ultimately leading to what happened on the 15th of June 2020 at Galwan, again, where no shots were fired, our own occupation of the Kailash Range. All that is indicative that things were not as normal as they were with China. Though I noticed a little before, because I retired in 2016, and before that, since I was also the Chief of Staff 14 Corps, I would
Yes.
go around seeing things for myself. I didn't see anything much. Before that, again, later when as Chief of Staff Eastern Command, went to Arunachal, saw all of it because I commanded by brigade there. And then I noticed that things were quite okay. The things were not as bad. And it surprised me also that when things were looking up, the trade was doing well. Every time the interaction
Yes.
that was taking place between us and the Chinese was okay. Even on when I was interacting with some of the general officers, I remember one of them, or rather the entire team, came to meet us at Fort Williams in
Yes.
Calcutta. So the things were okay, absolutely fine. I was also quite surprised as to what led Xi Jinping to do what he had done.
I think the operative phrase that comes to my mind is the Chinese philosophy of hide your strength and bide your time.
Right.
They've been doing that for decades, that they wanted to grow economically first. And they've actually started to flex their muscle now that they are economically viable, economically strong.
Yes.
They've started to flex their muscle in the early part of this century. And from 2004 or 5 onwards, when the first such fisticuffs and pushback started, I think it was in Chuma first,
Yes.
and then later on in Depsang, a few years later. And then from then on, we have been seeing on the media, sometimes whenever our patrols came face to face, initially it used to be just shouting matches, but then it got to shoving and pushing, etc. So over the 10 years, over the last 10 years,
Yes.
we've seen more of such incidents. And this is where I come to the point where I'm saying that China was actively pushing to not get into a fight, to my mind, but
Yes.
to assert themselves at the line of control and try to change the status of quo unilaterally.
Yes.
Why were they doing it? They were doing it, I think they are doing it now, because as China's stated aim is to replace USA as the number one superpower,
Right.
they have, for them, India is a potential rival in Asia.
Right.
And they want to assert themselves or be the dominant player here, show their dominance. And for that, LAC gives them the perfect breeding ground. And that is why I think they did what they did in 2020, tried to change the status quo unilaterally. That
Right.
led to Galwan and many other things.
Absolutely.
It is the new normal for a simple reason that trade continues, because we are all bound by various international trade agreements. And here in India also, you find that most of these businessmen seem to be dependent, and the things are going on. So, well, trade continues over $120 billion, and
Yes.
so be it. So it doesn't really affect China. Now, as regards the new normal, when I say, Chinese have built up the infrastructure over the years.
Yes.
I've seen that happen. And numerous times I would walk on their road on the other side to see the kind of blacktop roads that have come up.
Yes.
Even take the BRO team with me sometimes, show
Yeah.
them as to what kind of bitumen are they using. How is it that their roads don't seem to, get swept off during monsoons
Yes.
and things of those kinds. So a lot of development. And those developments were evident from the construction of roads, the G239 and this thing, over 10,000 kilometers of blacktop roads, vehicular movement that was noticed. I could see people moving from one place to the other place with just no time, where it would take us some time, they would be there within no time. So infrastructure was one major development that had taken place. Lots of airfields had come up. The railway line had come up. So slowly and steadily, what could be seen as, if at all they indulged in anything of kind of a war earlier, maybe there were about 2-3 seasons to build up.
Yes.
It doesn't now take them maybe a few days to build up. They're already there. They're just about 10-15 kilometers, maybe certain places, maybe about 50-75 kilometers behind. So they're already there. Now, with the parallel kind of deployment over here and the ability to respond, that came as a big surprise to China. They probably never expected. But every time my interaction, things of those kind, and never, not even for a moment did I ever feel that we are going to lead to this situation. Well, a bit of tension, pushing, pulling, banner drills, telling them go back, they would go back. But then subsequently that May 2020, in which each one of them had started throwing stones at one another, banging their stones against each other's heads. Those kind of situation, of course, did alert that something very serious, and they weren't doing that kind of a thing. Even if Pengang saw various patrolling, well, if we met, we would do the banner drills, they would go back, we would pull back. So they would try and come up to finger 4, we would go up to, we would also walk up to finger 6, go towards finger 8. They would tell us go back, we would tell them go back.
Right.
We would all disengage. Things are looking very normal. Even at Depsang, even at Demchok for that matter, everywhere. But what has happened now, it looks new now. Because China will not. China believes it's the center of the world. China believes that any country, wherever it is, definitely in Asia, they alone are entitled to sit on the top table.
Right.
Nobody else can share that top table with them. If that we saw, India, as what Satish also said, is they only fear that India is the only country which can match up to them. And if the kind of leadership that is now existing in India, and India is slowly and steadily moving up, becoming the 3rd largest economic power, modernizing. There is a tremendous amount of pride in the Indians, tremendous amount of hope amongst the Indians. There is hatred towards the Chinese. So all these kind of new changes that are taking place in India also seems to now give more, and there are closeness with USA, very kind of agreements that we have, the various Quad agreements, so many types of agreements between USA, between Europe, between France, and all countries, Israel, Japan, everyone. That also seems to give them a feeling that India is now anti-China. And that anti-China feeling seems to irk more Xi Jinping as to how is it that the pressure that is putting so much of pressure in India, despite them not buckling in. And that is what disturbs them. And this, like you rightly said, this is the new normal, and it will continue to. If some good sense prevails on China, and suddenly Chinese decide, but I don't think China should never be trusted. Even if they pull back 50 kilometers today, they are hunky-dory, they are on top of the world. So there's no problem. We should be vigilant. We ought to be careful. And China cannot be trusted, and China's expansionism will continue, and this is the new normal. And in fact, I would say we should be prepared for the worst. War avoidance.
It's a longer border, more difficult terrain, and harsh weather. But, having initiated that kind of face-off that it has resulted, the Chinese army has initiated that kind of face-off that it has resulted into. We've had more than 20, or I think it's 21 high-level meetings, including the reps of MEA. We've had 13 meetings at the foreign office level, and that is between External Affairs Ministry, the working mechanism. Several meetings have taken place. During these meetings, what has happened? I'm not saying that they did not yield any results. At least we have disengaged on some of the flashpoints. We've disengaged from a face-to-face, eyeball-to-eyeball confrontation, because such confrontation can just ignite or spark off some clash somewhere, and which can spiral out of control. So to that extent, at Galwan, at those patrolling points of 15, 17 Alpha, at Pegongso Lake, North and South Banks, we have achieved at least a disengagement, a little pullback. There is a space between the two armies, which is a welcome sign. Though a couple of flashpoints remain, the area of Depsang Bulge remains, the area of Demchok remains, and meetings will perhaps continue. But to the larger question, whether this is a new normal, I think uh, yes, this it is going to be difficult to be able to demobilize. We may have
Right.
disengaged from each other, but
Yes.
to go into pre-2020 position would mean demobilizing those two divisions that they have
Yes.
built up,
Right.
demobilizing all that we have built up, and taking them back to, let's say, 100 kilometers, or I'm just taking a figure, taking them back to the barracks, so to speak. I don't see that happening in a hurry. So
Right.
then we have to be prepared for this new normal. We have to be prepared to create our infrastructure to be able to support them
Yes.
logistically and every which the forces logistically and every which way. We have to stock them for winters.
Yeah.
And to that extent, in the last 4 years, the improvement that our infrastructure has seen, whether it's roads, bridges, tunnels, communication infrastructure, optic fiber cables, everything, and all the air assets, etc., the kind of infrastructure improvement or enhancement that we have seen has has never not been seen before, ever before. So the short answer is yes, it is new normal. And to your question of whether we are prepared, I think in the last 4 years we are well prepared to meet the Chinese army, and we match them strength for strength, and all along the LSE. Let me reassure everyone.
See, if you ask me, definitely some troop deployment did take place, but that doesn't really much because everything else gets sorted out over a period of time. There is no denying the fact that China has been instigating Pakistan to continue to do. And if I may just quote a small incident, it was way back in 1963 when
Yes.
Shaktam Valley was being gifted to Ayub Khan. At that point of time, Chau Enlai recommended to Ayub Khan that this is the time, as he said, you people look alike, talk alike, eat alike, and everything can be done. This is, you could do nothing better than just carry on with guerrilla tactics in Kashmir. And having said that in 1963, and what does
Yes.
Xi Jinping now tell the delegation headed by the Prime Minister to China just a few days back? That what's going on in Kashmir? Human rights violations. Imagine Xi Jinping
Yes.
talking about human rights violations. What does this show? Instigation by China to
Right.
Pakistan that keep doing it. Keep India on the run. Do not let them settle down. Definitely not in Kashmir, because
Right.
this is something, because despite all agreements with Pakistan, what better, 93,000 PWs returned for a similar agreement, which stated very clearly that it would only be bilateral. As Pakistan, again like China, can never be trusted because they do not abide by a single document. That, imagine 93,000 PWs being returned,
Yes.
or that this talks similar agreement would be bilateral. What does Pakistan do? Internationalize every now and then to ensure. So you will find that this also, much that the area right from Kathua and carrying on to Hiranagar and
Yes.
Vijaypur and going on to Jammu, Riyasi, Rajouri, Punj, Doda, Kishtwar, Bhadarwah, all these areas have been
Right.
seen as something quiet, very quiet, and nothing much has been happening. The population
Right.
also at places 50-50, some places
Yes.
60-40, some places 40-60, like that. But so it's a mixed population and everything
Right.
is normal and seems normal, and nothing better than creating this kind of a divide amongst the Hindus and the Muslims. Because the
Absolutely.
valley is 98% there.
Yes.
So there's no problem. It's only
Right.
here that there's a mixed population, hoping that something will trigger which will lead to something so that they could. But it's not easy. Yeah,
Right.
we are vigilant. We know what's happening. But yes, we cannot afford to be complicit. We need to be guard the borders. We need to guard all along with such a this thing.
Right.
All means have to be used to ensure it. But yes, Pakistan will continue to do what it is doing. We cannot trust. And yes, now instigations from China with all the wherewithal, be it cash,
Yes.
be it weapons, be it information, be it anything and everything. The supply will continue and Pakistan will do what it is doing. We have to be alert, irrespective whether it is north of Pir Panjal or
Right.
south of Pir Panjal.
Today, when the Chinese president is openly talking about human rights in Kashmir, he's actually goading the leadership in Pakistan to do
Right.
more. On the other hand, we've had last 5 years after abrogation of Article 370. During the last 5 years, things have improved vastly in Jammu and Kashmir, especially the Kashmir region. Now, with this, um, with this kind of terror attacks that have happened in the last 1 week in the south of Pir Panjal, Let me just interrupt myself to only come back to the point. You know, four terrorists holed up in an area can tie up disproportionately large number of troops. You know, when we say that we have a mirror deployment in Ladakh, we have the kind of deployment Chinese have managed have brought on. We have got a similar kind of deployment of troops, of weapon and equipment platforms, etc. But here, when four terrorists attack somewhere, then another four terrorists attack somewhere in another district, we tie up a large number of troops. Troops, that is soldiers, the Indian army, is a finite resource. If you have to deploy more troops somewhere to take care of a security situation, it will always happen at the expense of some other place. So it's a very smart tactic, and this collusive effort is going to pay heavy dividends for our enemies. And I see a lot of it happening in the future. And I think we need to prepare ourselves for this with some smarter solutions. Right now, that is a topic of another discussion by itself. But we need to think about it, that these collusive efforts will take place, and we need to see how we can manage both our adversaries in a gainful manner.
China would be prepared for a war anytime, but as I said, China firmly believes that the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without a fight. That's what Chinese aim would be. But if they find themselves in economic, shimozu in China itself, and the kind of, I would say, the promise made by Xi Jinping to his people, being that they would be the topmost and they're going to be numero one center of universe, they would get all of it that they wanted for, and Chinese are going to be the top notch and everything are possible, and that they need not worry. All they need to do is surrender the fundamental rights of protest and do nothing that will upset the apple cart of the Communist Party of China. If that kind of a promise that he is assuring the Chinese, and he is trying to deliver as much as he can, but after COVID and the kind of expansionism that Chinese have involved themselves in, the kind of sanctions that are coming on it, and China firmly on manufacturing and not like the United States or Russia that it is dependent on the world. It is dependent on everybody. And therefore, Chinese are definitely on the back foot. Whether she can deliver what he has said or he is not able to, and nothing better than as he finds himself in top notch. He's deployed all that he wants with mirror deployment, troops. What has he with the rocket force and the finest, the stealth aircraft now on top of in the Tibet region, all of it. And therefore, we must be careful. We must be prepared. We must ensure that we do not go through a war, because it's a very expensive proposal, not for any other thing. If we were to go back by 10 years, China itself would also go back by at least 7 years. It's not that going to be easy. And so the promise of Xi to the people, or whoever is the leader at that point of time, is not going to be easy. So there will be revolt within China. So, but we must be prepared, and therefore war avoidance is that what I would always say we should be ready with. And preparation at the highest, be ready at any point of time to take on any contingency that might occur, but definitely when you're ready and prepared, then there's a possibility that it can be avoided. But if you're not prepared, we can get just caught on the wrong path, and not better with the kind of troops that we have, the kind of modernization that we're going in for, the kind of Atmanirbhar, self-reliance that we're looking at it, becoming the third largest economy in the world. All of it demands that India should be prepared for the worst.
When we look at China, let's see it from Chinese point of view. To my mind, what are his priorities? I think in his priorities, the first priority would be reunification with Taiwan in whichever way they want to do it. His second priority would perhaps be the South China Sea and the Pacific, because here he fears the Quad and such like groupings of countries are coming together to, as China feels, the Asian NATO, or they say they're ganging up against China. The land borders with India, to my mind, are not his hottest priority right now. Because if she wants to leave a legacy for himself, he will talk of reunification with Taiwan will give him better dividends. Now, the point I'm trying to make is from that point, if you've seen with this perspective, I think that is why he started off with Indian borders first. They started off by putting pressure on us. So now that we are forced to deploy more, we are forced to allocate more resources towards Ladakh. It will also keep us under pressure as far as our rivalry with China is concerned on different fronts, diplomatic, political, economic, etc. Also, it gives them a lever to sort of put pressure on us against Quad. That's a very stated thing. They've made many statements like that. They don't want India and America to be getting closer than we already are. So, to my mind, I do not see a full-fledged war taking place between India and China on the LAC. We might see, as the talks are going on, as we've resolved some irritants, some more we may be able to resolve, but we are not going to pull back or demobilize totally, is what I see. And we might just see some more clashes, some more skirmishes,
Yes.
but it's spiraling out of control to become a war. But let's also remember, I mean, last sentence on this, let's also remember that we are all nuclear countries. You can
Yes.
see what's happening between USA and Russia right now, because they're sort of showing eyes to each other and threats to each other. The level is being enhanced, and it is troubling the world.
Right.
So to my mind, I don't think we're getting into a war. Some skirmishes here and there, maybe.